Start with opening remarks and comments from anyone.
Dr. Chernoff, this is your first meeting?
It is.
So,
Yes.
yeah, I guess I've always got something to say, right? Just want to say, first and foremost, thanks for coming in and delivering the update. Since I've come on board, I've been able to see, obviously, the difference between where I came from and where I am now relative to healthcare, the options that are available to our team members, and I just want to say that for me, it's been a major upgrade in the benefits, the health benefits, prescription benefits, dental benefits. It's just been absolutely outstanding. I now see why what we have currently is best in class, and I think that I don't want to speak for the board, but I think that everybody's committed to continuing on the trajectory to continue to be as good as we can be and as responsive to the needs of our employees as much as possible. So thank you, Madam Chair.
Where were you before this? We could use an introduction.
They know who they are. Hopefully they're not watching.
This
Well-
is Barry's first chance of meeting
Yeah.
Dr. Chernoff.
It is.
Barry humor.
And we've been delighted to be here. We're approaching our 5th year, and we were blessed to have a visionary board and a courageous superintendent and a great internal staff that were willing to accept some of the new approaches that we offered. And certainly, we were talking about this earlier today. There's not that so much different in terms of the benefits that the employees see, except as you point out, I've looked at a lot of school system plans, and this plan is fairly rich. What really drives it behind it is the way we constructed the mechanism, and it's what we call active management. And what I mean by that is, historically, a school district would hire Blue Cross Blue Shield of Florida or Aetna or UMR and they would say, here's what your benefits are going to look like, and they run it. On our platform, we feel that the insurance companies created more friction, less communication, more oversight, and didn't allow for the individuals on your staff to interact into the very bowels of the plan and affect outcomes. So that's kind of the broad overview. The first page that we're looking at is a history from 2018 through current. And again, it does show some of the progress we've made. If you look down at the PEPM, that's per employee per month, total expense, you'll see that we're almost $100 per employee per month, less today than we were 5 years ago. And that's against a backdrop where most health plans have had incremental increases every year as the plans have been run by the larger insurance companies. Last year, we had, or I should say in 2019, we had the impact of COVID. This year, we think we're on track to come in at about $54 million, which is still well below the $64 million that we inherited. The next page, before we get too optimistic about how the results are going to be this year, this is a rolling 12 of the most recent 12 months starting last July. And if you'll notice, August and September were pretty high. And part of that we recognize is because the teachers are off, and that's the time of year when their schedule allows them to get things done. So we don't want to be too optimistic about year-end results until we experience what's going to happen in the next couple of months. But I think we're going to end up fairly well. You'll notice on that rolling 12, we were actually 3% over revenue in our expenses. But since we took on a new administrator in October, and I think coming out from underneath the cloud of the pandemic, I think our claims have normalized at a much lower level. The plan year to date, we're 9% below revenue currently, so we're encouraged by that. Pharmacy has had a couple of high months, and we've been focusing on that the last few months. Carolyn, you want to tell them a little bit about Ozempic?
Sure.
And
I'm sure
GLP-1s?
you've seen it all over the news and all over, even on like Saturday Night Live and in commercials and skits about the classification is the GLP-1s, which are something like the Ozempics for people who are using it for a variety of things, but it being used for weight loss. The way that Ozempic was out there, people were getting it dispensed from their doctors. The way that the Osceola plan is designed is that we cover drugs for people with diabetes. We do not cover drugs for weight loss. So effective August 1st, we've now made an edit to the dispensing system that for those GLP-1 class of drugs, they need to have an ICD-10 diagnosis of diabetes and have the requirements of taking metformin or having tried metformin for diabetes also. So we expect that should take off the people that are just using it for weight loss or if they're insulin resistant. So if they're type 2, yes, they can still take it if the doctor recommends it. But again, we're hopefully going to have those people who are just taking it for weight loss off of the program. It's a very expensive drug. People are saying it works, and great, but again, the plan does not cover that.
Would that be more for people who are using outside providers, not through the health center?
It could be for any provider. So any doctor who said, oh, you are insulin resistant and you want to do weight loss, this drug might be for you. So we had it covering from internationally and domestic. But for both dispensing, international and for domestic, we've put in those edits where it will be provided, but you must have a diagnosis of type 2 diabetes.
Good to just remind the board about the savings going to international for it.
Yeah, so the savings for international for Ozempic, they're about half of the cost.
Yeah.
But still, we saw such, I mean, it was $100,000 of we saw in months coming through. So it was, everyone was going out there, they saw the commercials and they were going out there and getting it. So hopefully with that, we'll see some reduction in that, those costs going down.
Did we have any issues getting it for patients? Like I've seen some of that, and does that also drive up the cost of it?
So
by
some-
being in such a demand?
Some pharmacies nearby did, but Prescriptions Unlimited did not have the issues, so we were transferred a lot of them over to Prescriptions Unlimited.
Yeah, we never saw a supply not have it here, so in Central Florida, it was okay, but heard nationwide, there were some places that were out of it.
But that's a good point. I mean, they did have a concern in Canada where the Canadian government was saying, hey, we're not going to allow importation to the U.S. just because of the supply. So we got some of those warnings, but it didn't have an impact, which was good.
How far along is the pharmacy right now? Because last time I was there, it was doing construction.
It's
been up since
It's
January.
open
Fully
December
functional.
19th.
December 19th.
Soft opening in December, but to our employees was in January.
It's been a big hit with the employees.
Yeah.
You know, our approach is very data-driven, and that means we're looking at the data on a monthly basis, trying to forestall large claims or looking for trends that where we can find improvement. And in the pharmacy, two other things that we did recently, we did an audit of the pricing of international versus domestic, because we did find, did we not, that some domestics were actually less expensive than the international. So this isn't the sort of thing that you can put in place and walk away and hope for the best. It's something that you have to constantly review.
It mostly was because since then, a generic had become available.
Right.
So when we put it on the list, it was because there was no generic available. Now there is, so then we turned it off for international and then make them, then allow them to come back domestically for it.
And just this month, we did a study of available biosimilars. Humira is very expensive. It's for plaque psoriasis, it's for Crohn's disease, and it's domestically, it's $5,400 a month. Internationally, it's $2,200 a month. So don't forget, when we get an employee to come onto the international plan, their copay goes from $200 to zero. So I want to constantly remind you that we're not just here to save this health plan money. We're here to lower the barriers to care for your members, because we find if people get care early, it has a dramatic impact in reducing overall plan costs. It's sort of an anomaly. The better the benefits are, the lower the plan cost can be. So,
And just remember, with the biosimilars that are out there, you have to be careful with, if you start somebody on a specific drug and you try and switch them to the biosimilar, sometimes they have challenges associated to it. So it's not going to be hey, a biosimilar's out, let's switch them over, like the Renflexis and the Remicade. That was an issue where people were being switched over and then they were having some other concerns. So we have to leave it into the provider's hands and into the patient's hands. But the sooner we can get a patient on a biosimilar right from the get-go, that increases the probability they'll be able to stay on it for the long term and save the district. And there's several biosimilars that are in the pipeline that are going to be coming out to, again, replace some of the drugs that are in your formulary, and that will continue to drive the cost down.
We work with a consultant, we have pharmacy consultants, we have local pharmacists, like you have here with Eric Larson, and the team collaborates on how to, on the biosimilar rollout. You know, when it first is announced, do we sit and wait and watch it and see what the market's gonna do? And then rolling out patient by patient based on how the provider thinks that the member will react to that. So they'll have their campaigns now to begin if it's appropriate.
and I think that we contemplate with the new plan designs and the introduction of a new plan that uses the health center as the primary care home. We're hoping a lot of people will sign up for that. But the more people that we can drive care through your health center, the better controls we have on referral flows and appropriateness of medication. So we're excited about that. But
Carolyn, I would just say, back on December, you all need to be aware from a PR standpoint to protect the board. The pharmaceutical company had an objective study done of a controlled group that was not on Ozempic and a controlled group that was. And they published how the Ozempic group had a dramatic decrease in cardiac issues, liver issues, everything. So, and the purpose of it was to basically drive insurance companies to have to provide the coverage. So if we get one of these and I learned all this from a doctor who owns a ton of stock in Ozempic, he explained it to me. So if you get that pressure, just the board needs to know it's out there, and it's got nothing to do with the health of the employee, because there's other ways for the employee to be healthy.
Right.
It's got all to do with generating income.
Yeah, and one of the things with the Ozempic too that we have to also take into consideration, that the people who go on it for weight loss, you're on it for life. Because once you stop it, there's a rebound effect, you gain the weight back, but also there's gastric paresis, there's gallbladder issues associated to it, so now people are having to have their gallbladders removed, that's $13,000 to $15,000 for you. So those are the kind of things you just need to take into consideration, or actually the pharmacy team would take into consideration.
I love it when Kenneth uses those big
Hey,
words.
on
Gastroparesis.
I got a question. On page 6, it has like, for instance, like the medical claims, paid claims. You expect there to be a variance on that because you never know when somebody's going to get sick or the type of treatment plan. But the health center on, I guess, 1, 2, 3, 4, on the 4th column, you know, I expect that to be relatively stable because those are our salaries. I understand that maybe there's a couple Band-Aids or some things that you may use, but on 1 month in November, it was $351,000, and in May, it was $619, almost double. And I don't understand how you get that when most of the employees in the health center are on a fixed salary, or we have like administration. I don't want to say what it is, but I'm asking, what is it from your guys' perspective?
We've
So-
added services, but
Well, added
Kind of
service,
that
but
particular month.
also, there's things that are done at the health center, such as labs, that are sent to a third party. We noticed that there was a large, significant number of labs that were billed for, and so we held those claims, and that's where you saw some of the catch-up happening up in, I think, 2 of those months. So we went through all of those claims to figure out, but there's a lot of other services that are being done in the facility. Like we brought in COVID testing in the facility so we can do it there at the point of care. So it's not just the salaries of the employees, but also the services that we're offering within the facility.
In the near future, and I don't want to quantify near, but they're going to open up an infusion center, so that some of these very expensive infusions that are being paid for under the medical plan will end up under the health center at a much reduced cost for those types of infusions. You want to comment on
Yeah.
that?
Well, when does the board approve something like that? Because if we approve, like, say, a certain budget to be there, I expect it to be fixed. If it's being exceeded because somebody's making that decision, when does that trigger the board to say, hey, look, we're going to have a 20% increase? You know what I'm saying? It's like, it's not, hopefully, it's not just like a blank check.
Yeah, it reduces claims.
It shifts it.
It
goes
shifts it from one to
the
the
claims to the other. So you save the money. It's a higher expense for the health center, but you're saving the money on the claims themselves.
Yeah,
So the ROI for the health center, every dollar that we infuse into the health center has a return of lowering the medical claims, because we can administer healthcare much more effective and at a lower cost in the health center.
So for example, on infusions you have a couple
But just on
components.
that, I'm sorry, just to understand, I'm on the number right now.
No, it's a legitimate
Like, for instance, you look
question.
at May, we increased to 619,000, but then the paid claims went up to 49, so it's the opposite. I should have seen it, if you're going to increase the health center costs, I should have seen a decrease in claims. But I saw
If you look at the medical plans,
Yeah, we have medical lag. So so anything for the health center for May would have been claims that's happening, medical claims were taking place in July, August.
Yeah, it could be 30 days, 90 days lag with medical claims. But a good question, on the infusion, that's a good example. So infusion, you have not only the cost of the drug, then you have the administration of it, and then you have a facility, those 3 components.
And the doctor's
If we-
upcharge.
And the doctor's upcharge on the infusions, yes, you're absolutely right. But if we are able to bring it into the health center, and it's going to really be dependent on how many individuals actually choose the health center only, health center plan, because an infusion can take a room for about an hour or even an hour and a half, or sometimes even more depending on. So in that room will be ultimately dead. But in that situation, we would control where we'd procure the drug, the infusion, not at the doctor's office, it would be through Prescriptions Unlimited. Then it would be an outside infusion company, because you have specialty nurses and providers that do infusions, so we'd be able to control that cost. And then from the facility fee, that's where you would save, because then it's being done in your facility. So that's where that shifting of the cost from the medical side would shift over to the health center side.
And I can see how that would jump out at you, the 600,000 in that month. But each month, any anomaly you're seeing here, we do go over with the leadership team and offer a breakdown of exactly what's going into those numbers. So,
Do we have like do we have an overall target at the end of the year? That to say, hey, if the budget does not exceed this amount, or do you guys not have that?
We do track all of
We
that.
have a budget, we do have a budget monthly, but then we'll come back to say, hey, we would like to bring in a new test or bring in a new service into the facility that potentially could exceed that budget that we have within our agreements.
And I guess because we're a government entity, we're not just a private sector. And so at what point does the overage of the budget get approved by the board? Now, at what point does it say it's just your decision locally, and you just come back, because technically the board is paying for it?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? So it's like, that's to me, it's more like the imagination of that, you know? When is it, because the board, what I perceive, Sarah gives us an annual budget of how much we're going to spend that year. So if you spend less than that, I don't care how many decisions you make, because then you're fluctuating. But if it's exceeding that line item or something like that,
Yeah, we're not. So the board approves the budget for our entire health plan, but you're not specifically approving a budget for the health center. So like they were trying to allude to, as we spend more in the health center, that's a good thing, because we're then spending less out in the private sector,
which is a more expensive
which is
environment.
more expensive. So what you're asking is if we exceed the specific health center budget, the board is not approving at that level. That's something, I mean,
Contractually?
We monitor it monthly. I mean, obviously, if something were to greatly expand, or, Kenneth's going to share with you as we choose to add services in the health center plan, we're going to talk about it in these workshops. So you'll know if as we're expanding, as we're adding services, this is the forum where we'll be discussing that. But we're not looking at every little line item in the health center budget and saying we went over on Band-Aids here, or we went over on this. We're not, the school board is not monitoring at that point.
Who is monitoring that, though?
We do.
For checks and balances?
We do.
For checks and monitoring themselves?
No, I mean, it's all in our
checks and-
data.
From internal control purposes?
Yeah, it's all in our data. We review that every month.
Very little gets past Ms. Haddix, I can tell you that.
That's a contractual, that's a contractual
The
thing?
budget's not contractual.
Okay, so it's just per the budget?
Budget.
Which, I guess, in general speaking, this is why you hire people that you trust and that you can depend on their expertise to do this, because you're supposed to be able to manage the facility, right? So I don't see any problem with that. You're capped at 50 grand, right, that you can spend without board approval. I imagine you guys have internal processes that will dictate that you're not gonna go spend $50,000 without approval of
Everything
some
that we do,
oversight,
we
right?
run it by them.
Yeah, we run it to the leadership team. I mean, it's one of the, like Sarah was just talking about, there's some things that we'd like to do in the future that will have a cost, but it's going to bring, it's going to save lives and save the board money. So you are correct.
There's a
We
rollout,
do, yeah.
discussions and.
It's the analysis that you make on these individual processes, right? And that's what you're coming back to report, the fact that
Correct.
you've done this. That's what you've done, essentially.
We generally, any type of concept that we do, we beta test it on Rosen population first to make sure it works and make sure that there's communication and is it valid, and then we talk about the results of it, and then how would it roll out for you all? Like
I
the
think,
dermatology bus,
Right.
we tested on our employees first.
And their pass-through costs, it's the labs that they were talking about was because our office noticed that from one month to the other one, it was a big expense. And it ended up being valid, we just wanted to verify that it was valid.
Yeah, that's not some of it's internal controls. Not that, like, to your credit, and I'll give you something that doesn't look like I'm attacking you completely, is whenever you guys say you want to do mobile mammograms, you just didn't do that. You let us know at a workshop, and so we knew that, okay, that's my whole purpose as a board of director. I'm supposed to be a fiduciary of our funds too, and so, I was under the assumption that it was a fixed cost, so it was kind of funny. So when it's not fixed, what is that process? I mean, to me, this is a workshop to talk about that too, is what is that internal control? When there's a decision to go beyond the budget, who's the final say? Because at the end of the day, who do we hold accountable if we break the budget and don't save money on medical expenses?
And those
Yeah.
fixed costs just depend on usage, honestly. A lot of our employees, again, left their yearly physical for the summertime, so that comes along with blood work. So you're going to get more blood work claims because of it. There are more expenses to the health center.
It is fixed to the degree that you guys are saying that we're gonna move this
Per
this
unit.
lever here to move this needle over here, right?
Per unit cost, or, so as we expanded
per
the health
employee
center
cost,
to,
yeah.
with diabetic controls, so we're seeing more and more diabetics come in. So we give away diabetic supplies at no cost to the members, so people that may not have been fulfilling them before, even though they were like 5 or 6 times the cost, we're giving out more because they're no cost to them.
If you go back to page 4,
But the bottom line is, yeah, this environment that we bring to you, hey, this is something we're looking at, and then you just bring you more information as we get closer and closer for you to make the final decision. Because yes, Dr. Shanoff has the ability to approve up to 50 grand, but some of these things, like the mobile mammogram, look how many people have been assessed and how many lives have been saved, and that could exceed 50,000. But how much?
I can appreciate the agility that adds to the process, and certainly I wouldn't be qualified to tell you that you should do mammograms through a bus in this process.
No pun intended.
Right? But, I mean, it makes sense. I mean, honestly, several months ago, I would question everything to a higher degree. But I mean, that's what you're selling, right? That you guys are the experts, that you guys can handle the decisions that you're being tasked to make on our behalf, right? And in the end, it went back down, these costs went back down.
but if you look at page 4, the health center costs have gone up. They right at double since
But the
2018.
BM has gone down.
Right,
Correct.
and the
But the
fixed costs have gone up, but the You know, when you had Advent Health running your health plan, it was a free-for-all sending out to specialists and facilities at Advent.
Well, that's everybody who isn't scrutinized.
Right.
Right, and the health
Right.
care industry is one of those industries where it's very difficult to scrutinize something where so few people are the expert.
That's right. Well, but that's also why we deconstructed into the various components. You've seen the ecosystem wheel that Carolyn put together. We have the various partners. And structurally, I think it's important for you to understand that
With coffee.
unlike the traditional advisory relationship where you have a broker that represents the insurance company to you, we don't have an insurance company here. We work at the pleasure of your leadership team, and we're there to do the best we can, given our experience and knowledge and expertise, to maximize the benefits of the plan at minimal cost to the degree that we can.
But we also, part of that, without trying to sound salesy, whatever, this is
You remember?
This is our calling. So when people say, what is your calling in life? My calling is to help groups save, I'm like trying to save America's healthcare. So my incentives are not monetarily. My incentives is for somebody to get their medicine that they need. Someone's not committing suicide because they now get their medicine, or they can now get their treatment, or whatever it might be. So our calling is.
But you're not collecting the profit. The person who's collecting the profit is the
Correct.
one who has to say that judgment in order for you to have that, right?
Correct.
And that's what we cut out.
That's what we
Was that
try to
profit
expose.
Well, not
without-
really. Somebody's making a profit at this table, right? It's not the school district.
Well, we're not Greenpeace, but we don't make.
Even Greenpeace
you know,
is making a profit. So
Yeah.
the point that I'm trying to make is that,
We make a living.
yes, so we are paying you a fee
Yes.
to conduct a process which, let's say Sarah, for example, may not be far more qualified than myself, Sarah, but you get it, right? Medical.
They're the experts.
Right, you guys are the experts. You're doing this process for a fixed fee, not for a fixed fee, for a fee.
Correct.
Right, and you're doing the best job that you can. Right, that's what you're telling us.
But-
I'll tell you, my only concern in the process is the fact that you guys are the ones that provide us with the grade of yourselves on behalf of the company that's making the profit. That's my concern. I think that you guys have done a fair job. It went down. I think that sees fit. That's fair. So the result is good. I think it was prior to the transition from the other company before was also, again, that was kind of troubling. But in the end, the results speak for themselves.
Right.
We appreciate that.
The next page, page 7, is we track large claimants. And we do this because there is an insurance element that I'm going to talk about in a minute. This plan is not without insurance, but I would remind you, the purpose of insurance, the function of insurance, is to protect against the unforeseen, unexpected, financially catastrophic event. Your group, I can't tell you what your claims are going to be, but I can I will put my entire net worth that you're going to have at least $50 million worth of claims in a year, given our knowledge and your track record. So our approach is, why would we buy insurance on the first $50 million? Why wouldn't we just expense it directly? Because there's a cost to insurance. So we're tracking, and we track it at $200,000 and above. And as you get deeper into the plan year, this list of people will grow because they're accumulating, and then it starts over again October 1st. So in the early part of the year, there hasn't been enough time for someone to spend $1 million. So right now, our largest claimant is at $934,000, and I'll explain the relevance to that in the next slide. But we have a variety of issues here. We just got a report from our end-stage renal disease partner, the people that handle our kidney issues. And, they've got a $223,000 case rate per year for dialysis. Well, dialysis unaccounted for can run $800,000 a year. So we've contracted with a specialist in that area who has the relationships with the Freseniuses and all the infusion groups and gets these case rates to manage those. We are tracking right now a couple of transplants. I don't believe financially those will fall in this year, but they might fall in next year, depending upon the timing. And Frank will tell you, Kruppenbacher will tell you, as we looked at the history with your prior administrative company, they spent $2.1 million on one transplant. And we're getting transplants below $500,000, more like below $400,000. That's a lot of money, but it is not without oversight and management.
Correct. But also about that, the dialysis things, it's not only having a contract for dialysis, that your plan document is written that way so that your dialysis claims get paid according to that contract. Because if it wasn't tied into your plan language, then they can rebut that, how they should be paid. So those are all things that have to go into play to make sure that we're getting that pricing on those big things like your transplants and your
And
dialysis.
there's also case management for people that are having lower kidney function, and they help them navigate to increase their kidney function so they don't have to get as much dialysis or don't become a patient that needs dialysis.
And I think, again, we talk about our ability to manage the financial aspects of this. We cannot overlook the fact that we're touching people's lives that are in need of care. And over again, we get feedback from the members who are in the group, even the expanded group beyond this, who tell us how much they appreciate the personal touch of having someone there to help them make decisions and steer them in the right direction. So,
Help it jump ahead.
I think that would be valuable to see. I think that those, because in the end, like some of these numbers, the statistics, paint one picture, but I think that these would be the expert, subject matter experts on the level of care, quality of care that they're receiving, right? That we need.
Lauren, he's a good suggestion that maybe we gather some of the, I don't.
Testimonials?
Yeah, well, I don't think we want to solicit them because that's self-serving, but I think we could certainly share with you what was freely expressed in many circumstances. Because it is a human condition. We're coming up on renewal, and this gets to the element of stop loss is what we call it, or reinsurance. And right now, we self-insure the first $1.5 million on any one individual. And as you can see, we've got someone here through through the year to date that's already at $934,000. We do not believe that will get above the $1,500,000. But the reason we do that is we look at what the reinsurance costs. And we trade off the fixed cost versus risk. Right now, I can tell you, we have a firm offer from our incumbent reinsurance company to keep the plan as is level, with no increase.
Same thing last year.
Right, in cost, which is pretty unique in the reinsurance, and that's reflective of the claims experience, but also reflective of the reinsurer's acknowledgement of the techniques we put in place to suppress the cost of claims.
That was what I was going to kind of get to. I thought 1.5 was kind of high, because could we get a quote on, because the point is, we already expended $4.6 million on the large claims, and none of them hit the stop loss. So we paid $4.6 million, plus we paid the premiums for stop loss. Can we do an exercise where we say, let's lower the stop loss to say 500,000, and what would that quote be? Because I want to enter into savings.
We can
If
do
one
that.
person hits 1.5 million, okay, one person hit, but we paid all those premiums. How much in premiums did we pay
Well,
last year in stop loss?
We've saved roughly $1.2 million in premiums over the last 3 years, going from $900,000 to $1.5 million. And this is the first year we've had a claim above $900,000. And, right now, we're looking at one of the
Now,
insurance.
is that something that you have to have, or can you look at it year to year? So
No,
say
year
for-
to year.
Like, say, for
Every
instance, we
year.
know, for instance, let's just pretend that the 900,000 didn't exist. Everything else was 600 and below. And we say, man, no one's going to hit 1.5 this year. You know, why even pay the premium at all that year? And just have it the next year when you see the horse, I mean, it sounds like, it sounds horrible. I'm saying, but you see the number reaching it, then you're like, okay, this next year, let's have stop loss. Or is there a requirement through legal that you have to have stop loss no matter
No, you
what?
don't.
can
You don't have to have it, but it's like buying insurance when your house is on fire. So you can get it before stuff happens. If we don't have insurance and want to get it, it all depends on.
No, I understand that concept, I'm talking about the amount. I'm talking about the
Yeah.
threshold of when you need insurance, because if, you know what I'm trying to say, because
Yeah.
1.5 is a high amount for somebody to get sick and have claims.
Right.
You know, when was the last time we even had somebody that triggered that? But every year, it's costing us, how much money in premiums is it costing us to hit that?
235,000.
Not very much.
But for 900,000, it would be 600,000. I'm using that. So the question becomes, if we are going to buy an extra $600,000 worth of protection, and keep in mind, you could have 8 people hit it, but generally speaking, when you get to these large numbers, you're talking about very little exposure. But would you pay $400,000 more in premiums to have $600,000 more protection? That's sort of the logic.
Yeah, I got you.
But I can.
I didn't realize the price was so low.
But I can- I
That's
can
what
put the
premium's only
numbers together.
250,000.
We actually have almost a difficulty finding carriers that want to get this in plan because there's not a lot of premium for them and their exposure is very large.
Right.
And keep in mind, remember, we're trying multiple transplants right now too, that are probably gonna hit later this year.
And we have to be honest with them too, to tell them what we have, right? We can't just be like, hey.
Oh, yeah.
They want to see all the claims.
They want to see
They want to see the
everything.
history.
Yeah.
Absolutely, but we're looking at an option, and it's not firmed up yet because they're looking at our claims. But what's been presented is $1,750,000 as opposed to $1,500,000, and it saves another $88,000 in premium. And it's we will advise you if we think that's a good buy or a bad buy, but it is the board's decision. We just aren't there yet. We will present the finals at the next, didn't you say, Lauren?
Next board meeting.
The next board meeting, right. So, but the good news is the reinsurance markets are recognizing the unique controls we've put in place, and as a result, the claims experience we're experiencing, and they're looking at our group favorably. I will tell you, I have advised groups in the past with fewer employees than you have that went without insurance altogether. Because the bigger your group, the more predictable your claims are. Now, we have to worry about a severe burn, which can be, $2 or $3 million. That can happen.
Premature.
It can happen.
Premature baby.
And that 1 in 2,000 baby drug
Oh, yeah, that's 2.4 million.
a year, right. So these are all the things that go into our calculus in trying to construct a plan that lowers barriers to care but maintains reasonable exposures to the board and the health plan.
So Kenneth, you want me to move?
Yeah, it's fine. So we're going to be focusing on experience. So on some of the reports you've seen from me in the past, you've seen each of our guests or patients that come into the health center, they'll get a text message about their experience from that visit. And we've ranged from 4.9 to 4.2, somewhere around there out of 5 stars. And that's really at the point of care and right at the point of service. But we've done another survey that's looking at a little bit of everything, from their overall experience with talking to people to how is it about scheduling appointments, how is it with the provider, are they listening, there's a lot of different components to it. And with this first run, we got over 800 plus respondents. And so on page 10, you can see the overall provider satisfaction. You can see that the trend is going up. Those are the kind of things that we want to look at. How is it that 4.9, how is it relating to how are they experiencing with the providers too? The provider could be the MD, the DO, the nurse prac, could be the chiropractor, could be physical therapy, any of those individuals, so that we can help coach and guide them to improve the service that they're providing to your associates. Page 11 is would they recommend the facility? You can see that the trend is going up. And then on page 12, that's really where we really can look at opportunities for improvement. That orange line is the national average, and then the green bar is what happened in June. And you can see an area for improvement is ease of appointment scheduling. So we do have appointments where they can call in, they can schedule the appointment, they can go online, those type of things. But we do recognize, and some of the things that we'll talk about at the end, are we have a lot of people that are on the phones constantly. And so somebody might be calling in to schedule an appointment, and our staff can't handle that, or they're trying to help somebody who's right in front of them. So that could be an area that we dive into to see how can we improve that area.
Why can't they schedule it online?
They can.
They can? Okay.
Everything else you can see, we're above the national averages across the board in each one of these aspects. And this was emailed to the population, and we got 800 respondents. This is done by an independent organization that gathers the data, aggregates it, and then provides it to us. On page 13, just really, again, looking at our score versus the national average, and then the number of respondents in that specific question, explaining things well, meaning did the provider spend the time to explain it? The area for improvement, again, is the ease of appointment scheduling, and we're going to dive more into that. On page 14, Mr. Melendez, we were talking about some of the things that we possibly would bring to you guys. And one of the things that Lauren and Natasha, we do go to the insurance committee?
Benefits committee.
Benefits committee, we talk about some of these things like the mobile dermatology. We brought it to them and they get excited about it before we continue to look at it. Two of the things that we're really looking into is colorectal cancer screening, and I'm a big supporter of colorectal cancer awareness and screening. So we have the colonoscopy, which is the gold standard, and we encourage everybody to get it done. But then there are people who will not get it done.
I'll make your appointment.
Then we have.
We're already on it.
We're, yeah.
We have it.
Then we,
I got chastised by them, I'm already going.
So then we brought in Cologuard. We, on the Rosen side, like we said, we bring things in, we'll do it on our side first and bring it to you. We were able to negotiate a great rate that they said, hey, they'll allow you, Osceola, to have that same rate. The next step is a blood test. So even with that Cologuard, we were only getting a 70% return rate, meaning 30% of the population were not returning that test in. I wouldn't be too concerned if your positivity rate wasn't almost 10%. So out of 100 people, 3 people could have colon cancer. So that's where we're taking it a step further. And again, this is just the board, and we're just in a workshop. We're looking at, and we're in negotiations with a liquid biopsy where, hey, you're not going to do the colonoscopy, you're not going to do the Cologuard, then we'll draw your blood. Because it is going to be a little bit more expensive than what we've negotiated for the Cologuard. But then that should help us get to, there's no excuse. We just draw your blood and get it done. So that's one of the pieces. Another piece.
Drawing blood is more expensive?
The
It's
test.
not, it's the test. So because I tried getting us to the same cost as the Cologuard, but we negotiated so well on the Cologuard, they're like, Kenneth, we just can't get there. So we were like, okay, that's fine. Now we need to really look at the patient and getting them the test they need. Now, if a patient is high risk, they're going for a colonoscopy. I mean, if they have family history or polyps or anything like that, we're going to tell them, get it done because you're going to be wasting your time. It's going to be positive. We're going to send you for a colonoscopy anyways. The next piece is immunotherapy. One of the big expenses is just allergy problems. You know, here in Florida, people have allergy, allergic rhinitis, all those different things. And in the olden days, you probably remember where we could do immunotherapy where we give you injections. Well, now they've got the technology which has the same effectiveness where we can do little drops under your tongue and it will have the same impact. And so we're in the negotiation stage for that piece and the logistics of that piece on the Rosen side. But once we get that going, then I would like to bring it to the health center because it's going to save on some of your expenses associated to people going to, you know, their doctors or to the urgent care for sinus infections and different things that could be caused by allergy
Or
problems.
asthma and all of those breathing
Asthma,
things.
yes, sir.
Kenneth, my parents bribed me to go take allergy shots every week. And I think what you're doing is you're eliminating the ability for kids who would otherwise get allergy shots to clean up from their parents. So, I don't know. I don't know. This immunotherapy seems just a little too easy.
But imagine if you didn't have the shots, how compromising that is to your health and your activity. When you see people suffering with allergies, that's not fun.
I will tell you that it was the best thing that I didn't know at the time. But I have to say that I do not have issues with my allergies because of taking those shots. So if immunotherapy is as effective today as allergy shots were then, it is absolutely worth it.
Absolutely. Now, there will be an
What was
increase.
the bribe?
Oh, yeah. $100.
Okay.
Movie.
$100 per shot.
So just understand that, the value of $1 then is not the value of $1 now.
Yes.
So $1 was quite a lot back then, and so it was $1.
Yeah. But Mr. Melendez.
He needs a lawyer fast.
So one of the things on this piece of it is not just the immunotherapy, the sublingual drugs, there's a cost to it. We have to do some tests on that individual to look at, okay, what are you allergic to? And there's a cost associated to that. But the hope would be we'd be eliminating or shifting some of the expenses on the medical side and even on the pharmacy side, because those patients might not need the Zyrtex, all the allergy meds that you see out there.
And the cost of an
To
EpiPen.
the health center then.
Well, and just quality of life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Can
And
go
then be able to
outside.
do those at home? You can do them on your own, not having to go somewhere?
We'd
Pick it up
want to do it,
somewhere?
yes, eventually. I mean, we want to do it in front of us first, just in case if you have a reaction, you want to do it in front of us.
Right.
But eventually, you'll be able to do it on your own, as long as they're compliant. But yeah, a lot of those medications, yeah.
But we're testing this at Rosen right now
Yeah.
with some of our people that have bad allergies.
And same with the liquid biopsy, we have patients who are going through it, so we understand how the process, the logistics, the flow, the return, the reporting, all of that kind of stuff, we have to make sure it flows well, and then we'll bring it to the health center once it's approved by the board.
So I know we have limited time left, we have 9 minutes. Talking about the upcoming year. So the health plans year runs on October 1st through September 30th of the following year. This year, our mission, we know that we had a mission to help attract and retain a lot of your staff. So teachers particularly, there was news out there that Orange County had planned that they had a lower payroll deduction for children and spouses and families. And what could we do to make it attractive and have a plan that someone could cover their family? Because right now, the school board pays a portion pays the employee's portion. If they want to cover a dependent, then that's really on their own through payroll deduction. So we proposed a health center plan, which has the health center here. Your beautiful health center is the medical home for these members on that plan. And we run that like the Rosen Medical Center. Our plan that we have at Rosen is this plan essentially. So it is the medical home, that's where all of the members go for their primary care. If during discussions and through an appointment that the provider and the employee decide that they need to see a specialist for care, then the referral is provided and they get to go see a specialist in the medical care. So with that, the premiums for children and spouse and family are very attractive for the people.
Lauren said that a real problem was people saying they couldn't afford to have their spouses on the plan. And now we're seeing an increase. That's going to increase the cost of the plan. I mean, it just is.
And one thing I was
You're
just
meeting the needs of more people.
tapping Lauren about was on our high claim report, 5 out of 12 are dependents. They're not employees. So as we open the plan to dependents, that opening up that plan is also out there. So again, the health center is the medical home. There are certain type of doctors that you do not need to have a referral for. It's your OBGYN, your GYN, also pediatrician. If you are covering a dependent child and you want to continue to go to your pediatrician, that we believe that children need that, and so that's your medical home for the child if that's what you want to do. Any type of mental health is no type of referral. Convenient care, so the CVS Minute Clinics and the urgent care don't need a referral, as well as, of course, the emergency room. So this is what we excel at. This is what Kenneth and his team know very well. It is a different plan than you've had before. Under Rosen, our associates are familiar with the referral process. We've been doing it for a long time. We haven't had referrals in healthcare under regular plans in 20 years or so. So it's going to be a lot of education from the health center, from the benefits team members, reminding the employees about getting that permission slip to go to that specialist. But we're confident we can do it. And what is this going to do? It's going to have the concentration of your healthcare spend spent appropriately. People not going on WebMD and second guessing themselves or just making appointments to specialists as they feel like they need to. It's going to have a consultant or a medical provider working with that member on their medical care.
One concern for me with this new plan is the scenario where, let's say, a child breaks his arm, right? Where are they going to go? They're going to go to the emergency room, right? And they're going to pay $400 for that. So, I mean, it seems a lot like you have insurance for these types of things. I think that's a common, I don't know, maybe it's not as common as I imagine. But isn't that like the common thing? Like that's why you would use an emergency room?
That's actually cheaper than deductible and co-insurance.
Yeah,
Okay.
yeah. So depending on the ER visit, you're looking at probably about $3,000.
So
But that's just not what I'm
they
used
could
to
go
in
to
terms of
urgent
insurance.
care. They could go to urgent care with a
Depending on the
broken,
break, yeah.
depending on the break. Roller skating with my daughter, I went to urgent care with a broken wrist.
GuideWell could do some things,
Right.
not necessarily your center care or your,
Okay. So that is an option. But obviously, yes, I mean, you go where you need to go.
correct,
Okay.
But you're also waiving it if they're actually admitted?
correct.
Okay.
Correct. Yeah, so on page 17, your Plan 2 and Plan 3 are current plans, and the new plan is layered in there. The
Well,
things
that's
that are,
like with all of them, I mean, that cost of a normal, that seems, I mean, I don't know, maybe it's a generational thing.
It's
but-
actually not uncommon. Those costs for copay for an emergency room, I think, and Lauren, correct me if I'm wrong, but before the copays became this large for the emergency room, there were folks that were going to the emergency room with a headache.
correct. We still have that.
Right.
You don't abuse the system.
Yeah.
We still have it.
Right. So ends up becoming a tremendous strain on the system. And so I think that this is something that we're seeing. This is a shift that we've seen now in the last, maybe 6-7 years with large organizational plans.
It's definitely to steer away from the emergency room.
As your
We-
healthcare
Correct,
normal,
yeah.
right?
And it should be
And
reserved
that-
for
an
trauma.
emergency room would be like a
Because you look at
broken.
urgent care is
right.
$45
Correct.
versus
That's why-
$400. If somebody's cost conscious, they'll go to
But
the
if
urgent
somebody
care.
actually has a broken bone and they have to go to the emergency room, we're not gonna charge them $400, is that what you're saying? It's waived?
Or,
No.
If they get
they're
admitted to the
like-
hospital.
They're admitted to the hospital?
So it is a $400 copay to go to the ER of that
and that just seems
$3,000.
counterintuitive to the reason that you have insurance, right?
There's always a copay though for, I used to pay like $200
Yeah.
with my private insurance.
They built a GuideWell right in your back door, and GuideWell can do a significant amount of what the emergency room can do. They can even do cardiac enzymes. They can do things to look for blood clots. They can do CT, ultrasound, all
And
there.
it may use straight to the hospital also.
Yeah, and if they have to, then they'll admit. They have like a 2% admission rate. So
What we
encourage
track-
your people to go to those
Right.
GuideWells.
What we track is inappropriate ER visits, and we get very good marks there. So the controls are in place. And $400 total, it's not $400 and then co-insurance, it's a $400 copay.
Some plans you see it's $400, $500 plus deductible and co-insurance.
Right.
So we have people that still use the ER because they have a headache or they don't feel well, they have strep throat, because the ER has to treat them, and they just don't ever pay the bill.
That's why we reduced the urgent care copay, because before on the Plan 3, it was $100, and the Plan 2, it was deductible and co-insurance. So we reduced it for all of them, for the in-network, the tier 1s, to $45 to encourage the urgent care visits. Yep.
So we're about 5 o'clock. Do we want to go over specific things on here, board, that you have questions on before we?
Just one thing I wanted to bring up on page 17 at the bottom, you'll see here, that effective 10/1, we are removing Advent Health from available claims on the Tier 3 level. So right now, under our plan, Tier 3 is any provider you can go to. So effective October 1st, Advent is being removed from that eligibility except for hospital emergency room. Under the No Surprises Act, they have protections that they have to treat them, and we have protections for their balanced billing now. That was a very long conversation with leadership, and that we have a very good hospital partner with Orlando Health.
With what leadership?
Just with the team here.
I think
So,
we've had the conversation at this table before
Yeah.
too, that it was discussed that that was the plan eventually to get rid of.
Well,
Of Advent Health, that was never in the discussion.
It absolutely was.
I remember
We had
having that conversation,
I can
that,
also-
because our relationship there has been broken and we
Yeah.
haven't been able to have the way we have with Orlando Health. I
well,
remember it.
on the next page, 18, the very last line, you look at the discount of what we pay Advent, or what we have paid Advent Health is 12% of what they billed. Another way of, and that's historically, so that's 150% of Medicare. Another way of looking at that is Advent bills out 12 times Medicare. And then Cigna or whoever gives you a 50% discount, so you're at 6 times what Medicare pays. And we think it's more appropriate to have in the neighborhood of 200% of Medicare. And they have just not come to the table. We have bent over backwards to say, we want a relationship with you. Even in Tier 2, we offered to pay them what Cigna was paying them, and they declined. So, we think there'll be some noise, but we're prepared. to
we're
deal
seeing
with
a
it.
little bit of noise in Lauren's office right now. Again, we're preparing the transition for people. The Benefits Committee has heard of, and the Benefits Committee is the ones who probably support, once we show them the data, and once you see the egregious charges that they have, they're like, get rid of them, we don't need them. So,
I mean, just the last pages are just the things that we're going to be doing to prepare for the health center plan and the influx of patients that we're predicting to come into the health center. We are adding an acute care provider to take same-day type of, not walk-ins, we still want people to call us, because if somebody calls us up and they're having chest pain, I'm not going to say, come on in. We're sending in 911, especially with 85% of your population female. We're going to be working on some of the templates, and there are things in our EMR system that we can work on, such as each person who comes in with hives, they're going to have the same type of documentation. So we're going to see if we can make it more efficient for our providers that will increase the throughput for your center. We noticed that there were some people who were getting 2 physicals a year. And so we're just going to work on to make sure that those type of things don't happen. Even with Dr. Hughes, our chiropractor, we have some people who are they are scheduled like once a week. And so we're trying to rein that in a little bit so that we have more people that can see him. We're going to be increasing the telehealth visits, which is something that through COVID we had, even from physical therapy, just to make sure that people have another level of accessibility. We're going to be pushing the portal. We've got we got over 1,000 plus that are using that portal, but the more we can get into that portal, the better, because then that's one less phone call I have to make to you. I can just say, hey, your labs are normal, and it goes to your portal, you get it and open it when you want to. So we're going to be working on that. We're going to be working with the Benefits Committee on the no-shows, because we still have problems with the no-shows. And so we can increase the costs associated to that for those individuals. And if we need to, the the national average is 3 rooms per provider, but that's the traditional type of provider that are in and out in 7 minutes. But as we have longer visits, we should be able to use the rooms that we currently have. But if we need to in the future, we'll steal from Peter to give to Paul. I mean, I was talking to the staff, I'm like, if the dietitian's not there, then just use that room to counsel a patient on their blood work. So just to be creative with the use of the space that we've been blessed with at your facility. And maybe potentially looking at bringing in the PBX department like I was talking about, because if all of our front office staff are on the phone, that person coming in through that front door, it's not really good customer service when you're saying, oh, hold on, I'll be right with you, when you're trying to serve somebody on the phone. So that's something we can house at their homes. They can work from their homes, they answer the calls, schedule the appointments, do follow-ups, whatever they need to do to serve the patient. That's really the gist of it.
I think most importantly.
Oh, in the RN, yeah, sorry. We're looking at bringing in an RN to help with gaps in care, case management, workflows, coverage, so that RN can be very diverse within the facility to help out with moving through throughput, but also doing triage calls. Say if that acute care provider is already filled up and the other providers are filled, at least talking to that RN, they can say, okay, hey, you're okay. I'm going to schedule you at 7 o'clock in the morning with the acute care provider to buy us some time, but also to provide that service to the patient.
Most importantly, none of this is something that we created and have pitched to this client. This has been built organically in conjunction with Lauren's leadership and the benefit committee. And it's, everybody's been allowed to have input, and we're flexible. If something doesn't work, we'll change it.
If I may, really quickly, we're in the middle of open enrollment, and preliminary numbers were at 16% enrollment in the health center plan. Last week was 10%, so as more people enroll, we'll get those numbers increasing.
It's exciting.
Make sure y'all complete your open
I was
enrollment.
gonna say, I did, Lauren.
Did.
Appreciate you.
If you need any help,
Any questions?
if you need any help, call Lauren.
I think we're good. Thank you.
And we're going to remind you, Dr. Shanoff, about your colonoscopy.
Listen, when I